And I kind of think benefits, maybe any business, client relationships are like dating. I don't want a one night stand. I don't want, a weekend fling or a summer runaway. I want a wife for life or a partner for life. And so I started kind of looking at clients the same way, saying, okay, are we aligned? Do you trust me and respect me, and are we going to work together? Or is it going to be a constant battle?
Thank you for listening to the Interesting People You Meet podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Newground Financial. Newground Financial is a full-service investment and insurance brokerage firm that specializes in employee benefit plans, corporate insurance, and retirement planning. Newground Financial serves the provinces of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, Ontario, and Alberta. Find out more at newgroundfinancial.com. Thank you for liking, sharing, and commenting on the Interesting People You Meet podcast across all of your favorite listening platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. By doing so, you are ensuring that more great people just like you have the opportunity to hear from our guests. Thank you, and enjoy the show. So welcome everyone to episode 18 of the Interesting People You Meet podcast. We have a pleasure to welcome Dave Patriarche today as our guest of honor. Dave is someone who is heavily experienced in the employee benefits industry in Canada and based in Ontario. And Dave, I've not mentioned this to you, but you've been a huge influence to me as I've launched my firm, watching the information that you share through CGIB, your association, as well as just graciously sharing your time for anyone that wants to help. It's impressive that there's others out there in the industry who are not scared to share their secret stuff for the betterment of our clients, the name of the industry, etc. So again, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me. And I thank you for saying that. So that's what makes it all worthwhile. Sharing is caring. And just a little thing, I'm actually maybe an honorary Blue Noser. I was born in Grace Maternity in Halifax. So
nice.
I
Awesome.
lived there for a couple of years before our family moved to Ontario. So
cool.
So don't hold the Ontario against me, I guess, is where I'm starting with.
A fellow East Coaster, we love it, and a sailor at that. So there we go. Maybe that explains it's in your blood.
There you go.
Yeah, so let's get started. And Dave, why don't we just start by asking, I'm curious to see, you post a ton of information. Again, you're a great resource for the industry and your clients. But how did you get started in the industry? I don't know the story. So can you share that with us and the audience?
Yeah, it was kind of by design after an accident. So I used to work for the Chambers of Commerce and Boards of Trade in membership sales, not in group insurance at all. And one of the big reasons people joined the chamber was to get into the plan that they offer. And so I learned about it a little bit along the way. And I said, if I ever decide to leave the not-for-profit movement, which I'd been in for about, I guess, 6 or 7 years at that point, then I would start up a brokerage on my own. And then all of a sudden I had some massive, great sales, great years. The Ontario Chamber of Commerce executives, which is all the general managers, asked me to speak at their annual general meeting and about how we'd had such great growth and everything. So I did that, and a month later I got fired. And it was just kind of out of the blue. My boss and I just kind of conflicted quite a bit, and probably the best thing that ever happened. So it was Easter 1996, and I spent the weekend going from feeling sorry for myself, plotting revenge, taking over the world, and then building Mainstay, and just launched it there. And my whole success factors I built from the very beginning, and I just said, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to get there. And that's kind of how it all started. So, it wasn't a long thought out thing, but when I actually sat down that weekend with my wife, we kind of said, okay, what are we going to do and how am I going to get there, kind of thing. So it was a bumpy ride off the start, as most companies are, but it's been a really neat ride along the way. So that's how I got into it.
Cool.
Sometimes getting fired is the best thing that ever happens to you.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Did you, because you've seen the benefits on the chamber side, is that what you knew you wanted to do for sure? Or did you dabble a little bit in life insurance in the beginning, or kind of what did that look like? Yeah,
good question. So right away, the day I got fired, literally within hours, I had probably 20 calls, emails, texts, whatever, from people saying, hey, come work for us. And none of them were none of them fit what I wanted. So I kind of had this big pros and cons list. And it was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, what's your business going to do? And, I wanted kind of Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. It doesn't quite work that way, but pretty much. I wanted clients I could have relationships with that would be long lasting. I didn't want to have to resell everybody year after year. So to your question about life insurance, if you sell life insurance alone, that's a great business. But every January you're broke again and you have to sell another policy. And one of the great plugs and pluses of benefits is it's recurring revenue where you can have long-term relationships. And so that kind of really appealed to me. And so I just went down the list and said no to just about everything. And I didn't realize at the time how supportive my wife was, because she goes, yeah, that's good. Just keep saying no. And then inside she's like, we have a mortgage to pay and a kid and like another kid coming, and stuff. So she kind of bit her tongue and said, yeah, do it. So really, I didn't seriously think about anything else but being a totally benefits focused advisor right from the start, which is unusual. There aren't too many people that walk in, start up, with really almost no experience. Without working at an insurer or family member or just some experience with the business. So
you got it. I think that's why I connect with you, Dave. I fall into that sort of
yeah, right.
So, really cool. Hey, I got to ask you a question then. So it's 20, 25 years plus now in the business. Was it all worth it?
Oh, yeah. The biggest mistake I made was not starting 5 years earlier. I mean, I was 30 years old when I started. Right. I wish I was done it when I was 25.
Amazing.
You know what? It's a great business. And I mean, it's good financially and everything as well. And I talk about, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. You're not working weekends and doing dining room presentations. But I mean, I've got clients I've had for over 20 years now. And, we know each other's lives really well. And you get to help them out, help their employees out. Not always in the best of situations. You deal with death and disability and catastrophic health events. But it's really fulfilling. And that's never changed from day one.
Awesome. So in addition, you wear many hats, as I know, and, you've started an association a number of years ago called CGIB. So why don't you tell us a bit more about that? What is it? Why'd you start it? And how's it going? Yeah.
So let me just hit the hats thing first, because I was kind of doing a list the other day. I'm like going, okay, number one, I'm a sailor. Number two, I'm a benefits advisor, an educator, a father and a husband, a traveler, an author. And it just keeps kind of getting added onto. Cool. So yeah, it is kind of fun. So I kind of get bored real easily. So in my past lives, and I've done everything from teaching driver's ed to being a union pipe fitter in a factory, but actually I wasn't part of the union and I wasn't a pipe fitter, but pulled it off for 6 months with nobody noticing, which is kind of interesting. All that stuff has kind of helped out. And so what I found as I started was there was not a good education system or process for employee benefits. There was the old Freedom 55 London Life model from out west from long ago, but it was gone by the time I started. The career agency systems were winding up, and I looked at them a little bit, but never got too far down the path. It always seemed too almost multi-level marketing sell your family, sell your friends, and, get them to come in and sell more. And so I just learned on my own. I'm innately curious, love to read and absorb information. And so a few years in, I started with a few friends and said, hey, how about we take four of us, it was 4 guys that I knew who had helped me out. And why don't we just get together for breakfast once a month? We'll schedule it out and we'll just bring problems and ideas and stuff and share them. And that's kind of how the group started. So it didn't have a name. It was just breakfast. And it went from 4 to 6 to 8 to 10 to 12. And at some point we said, it's a bunch of advisors. And we'd say, hey, does Manulife do this or Sun Life do that? And we'd all have different answers. And we go, well, that's kind of funny. How come they do it for me and not for you? So we said, hey, let's invite the insurance company reps out. So the group grew to about 350. And now they didn't all show up at once or anything, but we had the kind of a rule where when we got to about 25 people in the circle, we'd split it and start another one. So we started in Markham, which is just north of Toronto, which is where I was from. And then we went east and north and west and south and just kind of kept expanding. And the premise behind it really was, if you had a group of 20 people that were all your friends, peers, competitors, and you brought your best idea to give away, and you brought your biggest problem you needed help with, then theoretically you'd walk away from the table at the end of breakfast with 19 great ideas from the other 19 people around the table, and you'd walk away with 19 solutions to your problem. Now, in real life, there's probably never 19 solutions. It would be 3 or 4 that got repeated. But with a 19-to-1 return on investments of great ideas, who wouldn't do it? Well, I found very quickly, and you identified the kind of sharing thing, lots of advisors think that everything is brand new, it's theirs, nobody knows that, it's all been around forever. So I didn't see anything but winning by sharing. So we kind of developed that breakfast meeting. It grew, got up to Ottawa. We had one in Halifax for a couple of years. I don't know if you were around then. That was a while ago.
I think I was.
It was sort of. It was kind of short-lived, yeah.
Yeah.
And what I found was if I wasn't there kind of pushing people to share, people just clammed up and then people didn't show up and then the events kind of died out. So I decided, okay, that was a failure and I should shut the whole thing down. And why did I waste my time on all these people? And about 4 or 5 people reached out to me and said, this is crazy. This is the coolest thing ever. It works. You just have to find people that it will work for, that want to share, that want to help each other out, and that want to grow and develop and learn more. And so we restructured it a little bit and created an association. Originally, it was called GBGB, and it was a Group Benefit Gangs Breakfast. That was the name, but it actually came to me from my kids. And when I said I was leaving early to go to breakfast, they go, "Oh, you're going out with the great big goofballs, the GBGBs?" And I'm like, I like the name, but we got to find a better acronym. So it became the Group Benefit Gangs Breakfast. That ran along for a few years, and then members started saying, and there was no official structure. It was just loose and paid cash for breakfast. And then people said, well, we need CE events. There's no CE is continuing education. We don't need general information. We need technical benefits focused stuff. So I said, okay, well, let's put some events together. Let's put out CE credits for people. And I said, but the problem is we need some money to be able to invest and make this all work. And I had been funding it for about, I guess, the first 4 or 5 years. And so we started a association, which had a membership fee, and that kind of brought the numbers down to about 100 or something that were the people who really cared. And then it kind of grew. And I'm trying to think now what year it was, but probably around 15 years ago, kind of it evolved and then evolved about 10 years ago. And CGIB started in 2011, so 11 years ago. And it's kind of been running ever since, and it's evolved. It was kind of a hub and spoke system to start. So I was kind of the hub, and people would reach out and ask me questions, and I connect them with people and products and stuff. And I realized pretty quickly that's hard to do when you've got hundreds of people calling you. So Chris Gorey stepped up and he said, hey, you've used Slack before. Why aren't we using Slack to help connect people? And we started up a Slack channel. So now members can share information, share documents, chat, message and stuff all the time. And that's been kind of the most, I guess, recent evolution a few years back.
Awesome. Yeah. That's interesting. It's, what I think it's pretty clear, but what is your message to the industry? Because I've been around now for a few years, but I'm still one of the younger people in the industry. Yeah. And one of the things that I'd like to change is exactly what you're trying to accomplish, and that's more open conversation, as well as recruiting people into this specific business and employee benefits, and showing that that's a great opportunity. So what is your message to the industry? As you think through that.
Yeah, the one big one, I guess, is specialize. And, when I sit back and I look at most of our industry, it's always been a generalist kind of model. And the idea was, if you want to sell and be a Sun Life career agent, or you want to be a Great West Now Canada Life agent, or Freedom 55 or whatever, the expectation was you're going to sell life insurance and group insurance and do investments, individual and group and pensions, and do a little bit of everything, which is fine. But you don't have to anymore. I mean, in the old days, I'm going back way before my time, when it was small towns and, you were the only game in town, you kind of did a little bit of everything. And I get that. But we have clients all across Canada, in the US, internationally. You don't have to, be meeting people face to face. And the pandemic taught us that even more. But by specializing, you can really up your game. You can up your knowledge and your education, and you can really become more niche. And I think if you do that, you've got a whole world ahead of you. And the best example is, it takes a little while to get things going, but my last cold call, like my actually last day picking up the phone and making 50 cold calls for new business, was about 17 years ago. Literally, it's all been by referral, existing clients, centers of influence and stuff. And I'm very, very lucky that way that the clients I like to work with, I don't even ask for referrals. They just happen. And so I think if you specialize, you now are less competitors with less people. So I don't sell life insurance. So life insurance people can send me business. I don't do P&C. I don't do investments. And I think that specialization it just makes sense to me. I don't understand why the market doesn't do more of it. And interestingly, if tomorrow, Nick, you got, charged with murder, you're not going to go to your generalist, business lawyer that does a little bit of employment law, a little bit of contract law. You're going to find the, best damn, criminal lawyer in the province or in the country to get you off. And so if we do it there, if we accept the fact that our family doctor is not going to do brain surgery, and we look for specialists in all these different professions, let's be the profession we should be. And I think once you kind of go down that road of saying, okay, I'm going to be a group specialist and try and focus more and more. And I don't mean your firm can do everything. But I kind of go like, eventually people should kind of veer off into, that's our pension person. This is the woman who handles, individual life insurance and RESP, whatever. Mm-hmm. And even if it's not in your firm, it can just be within your, I was going to say Rolodex, but that really dates me. In your contact list. Yeah, exactly. In your contact list. And so if I would give one message, if you specialize, you will build a golden path for your business.
Awesome. So Dave, other than specializing and really diving down into a niche, what makes an excellent benefits advisor? You said you haven't made a cold call in 17 years. Yeah. Clearly you're doing well. And what do you think your clients see of you that makes them want to send you new business?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So it's kind of a few different things. So what makes an advisor a great advisor is somebody who's innately curious, who's a good listener, who asks all the questions and wants to provide solutions and help people. And that just sounds really basic. But what I find is a lot of advisors really kind of go into the order taking mode. So somebody calls you up and says, hey, Nick, I got a 25 employee company. We just want to put in a benefit plan. I got this old booklet I got from my competitors. I want you to, put that plan in place. And can we do it for the first of the month? And a lot of advisors will go, yep, no problem. I'll get right to that. Send me your census data, and away we go. And the first thing I say is no. Okay, stop. Why do you want to put in a plan? What's changed from you being in business for 20 years, not having benefits? What's happening now? Why that plan design? Have you looked at any other alternatives? Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever walked through what you're really trying to achieve? How does this fit into your compensation model? And it may not. It may just be a kind of a bolt-on thing. But I think having that, asking those questions and being that consultative kind of person is what kind of makes a better advisor. Now, from a client perspective, my clients are great. They're very patient to put up with me. And as we go through this, you'll find out why, I guess, a little bit more. But I think that what they're looking for is problem solvers, solutions, people that think outside the box. It doesn't be radical, just think about it a little bit differently. And I think most people, or most of my clients, not everybody, is looking for somebody who doesn't say yes, but somebody who says no too. So if I have a client who says, okay, I want to put in 100% everything plan, Cadillac of Cadillacs, I will quite often say that's a terrible place to start. You got nowhere to go but down. You're just going to disappoint. So let's start with maybe an 80% plan and grow it over time. Very few ever do. They just go, hey, that does the job. You just saved me 25%. I think they have to trust you, respect you, and really value what you add. It's a partnership. And I think if you have that trust, respect, and that partnership kind of model, then the clients respect you more. It's just that simple. If you're the order taker and you do whatever they say, you're not really necessary. And if our industry ever gets really fully commoditized, and we're getting that way a little bit, then you're just going to go online, you're going to fill in the boxes, and away you go. But I think advice is one of the biggest things that we do, and my whole practice has been about limiting liability and helping protect employers and their employees as well. And so from the employer standpoint, from a client standpoint, they look at me as being a trusted source of advice, and not just about benefits. I have some funny calls. For just a funny side story here for a sec. We had I have got a client I've had for years and years. They're fantastic, and we were going through the renewal meeting, and at the end, I kind of was in auto mode. We were just finishing up and saying goodbye and stuff, and I said to her as I kind of stood up, what else can I do to make you more efficient, effective, or successful today? And that's a line I use with advisors, like with CGIB people sometimes. I don't use it all the time anymore, but I used to. And she goes, wow, sit down, let's talk. And I'm like, oh gosh, no, that's not what I meant to say. And she goes, no. She goes, I have a list. And she pulls up this list of paper and goes, here's all these things that you can help me with. I go, okay, shoot. And she goes, okay, number one, my husband, who had passed away a few years earlier, built their house, and he had 100 windows that he custom made for the house. And so these windows are now old and need to be replaced. And she said, and I can't find anyone to make custom made windows like this. I'm like, oh, Dominic Trimbo over at Trimbo Windows, great guy, all custom. I'll connect you with him when I go. And she goes, oh, fantastic. She goes, well, how about fleet insurance for my trucks? She goes, you don't do that, so you can't help me. I'm like, nope, but Derek over at CRE Insurance is great. I'll connect you with him, and I'll send you over his information. She goes, okay, the most important one though, and she goes, that's great, but is the third one, and she hands across a piece of paper, and it's her grocery list. And I said, well, I can help with that. I go, there's home delivery in Ontario from a company called Longo's at grocerygateway.com. I'll send you over the website, and all that stuff will be at your door by tomorrow morning, kind of thing. And she's like, okay, that's it. I'm bringing my laundry list of things to do every time you come. And she's been a client for over 20 years, and we laugh about that one to this day. So, you know, what am I? I'm a trusted source of information, advice, assistance, whatever you need.
Okay. Well, one thing definitely just stood out to me there that you said is saying no to a client. So obviously, I'm new in the industry, and I've only been doing this for about a year now. And one of the first books that Nick recommended, and I guess introduced me to you, Dave, is your book. And maybe we'll dive into it in a little bit. But one thing that really, there you go. One thing that really stood out to me in that book was saying no to clients. And how do you feel that, I guess, tell me why you think that makes us a more trusted advisor when you can come back and not just be the order taker.
Yeah. And that wasn't from day one. I mean, when you're starting, you're hungry. Every piece of business is, one more step towards paying the mortgage, putting food on the table. But I learned pretty quickly how much things matter to me. And I remember a couple really bad clients. I mean, I had one client who was downright abusive, and it was from the very beginning. He told me how it was going to work, what I was going to do, what I wasn't going to do. And I remember I got the business, and I was kind of happy about it, but I was also kind of dreading having to talk to the guy the next day, and I had him for 2 years as a client, his firm. And every time the phone would ring and call display would show his name, I'd cringe. And I just kind of went, I can't do this anymore. And the final kind of situation was he had been declined disability coverage because he had a previous health condition, and we talked about it, and there was no way he was going to be approved. And after the first year, the company that we were dealing with was going through a lot of changes, and their service level was terrible. So we actually made a switch, which I don't do very often. And all of a sudden, he was fully approved for disability coverage. And I'm like, okay, what he had in his past history would never be approved. And I said to him, how come you're approved? You had to fill out a medical form again because it's a small group. And he goes, now I know how to answer the questions. And so what he was saying to me was, yeah, I lied to get insurance. And all I could think about was, and if you are ever disabled, the claim's never going to pay. And because they're going to find this in your history. And I don't want to sell a policy. I don't want to sell a policy to anybody. I want to sell a policy that pays, whether it's life insurance, individual, group, whatever. And that was it. So I actually called him up maybe a week later. It took me that long to build up my nerve, and said, I don't think we can work together anymore. And I said, just, you're abusive. And, he's like, no, I'm just tough. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're abusive. And now you've lied. And I don't want to be involved in that. So you pick a new advisor, and I'm out of here. And he signed an agent or record letter to somebody else who was so grateful to have him. And I never slept so good that night as watching him go by. And so learning lessons like that at the beginning kind of helped me to say, I want clients that are aligned. And I kind of think benefits, maybe any business, client relationships are like dating. I don't want a one night stand. I don't want, a weekend fling or a summer runaway. I want a wife for life or a partner for life. And so I started kind of looking at clients the same way, saying, okay, are we aligned? Do you trust me and respect me, and are we going to work together? Or is it going to be a constant battle? And so very quickly, I found you can figure that stuff out in about the first 15 minutes. I mean, if you ask good questions and how people respond, that helped me to kind of shape the direction. And I would say generally, I take about 1 in 4 clients that's referred to me. And it doesn't mean that I'm saying no to 3. Sometimes they'll say no to me. Like, I'm very open about my success factors and how I work. So I'll throw that in as a sideline right now because it'll make sense again later on. So when I started the business, I wanted to have $1 million block of business, which would basically replace my old income from my old job. I never had an increasing scale to that. So as long as I had $1 million block, I was happy. Anything above that was good. And I wanted to start with 2 weeks vacation, which I thought was fairly reasonable. And every year I would add half a week of vacation. So now I'm at 14 weeks of vacation last year, 14 and a half this year, 15 next year. And eventually I'll just be permanently on vacation. Well, real life I won't, because if you do the math, I'll be like 112 or something. But so when I talk to new clients, I'll say, okay, just so you know, I'm a sailor. I sail all over the world. I do these trips where I'm off the grid. If you're in the middle of the Atlantic, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no cell service, there's a bit of satellite, but even that's kind of not great. And if you don't like that, then we're out. And I've had people say, no, I expect you to be available 24/7. I want your cell phone number, and I don't want you turning it off. And I go, great, I'll find you somebody else, or you can find somebody else. We're not a fit. And that happens occasionally. But we right away, you're on the same page or you're not. And I find that saves me a ton of time and hassle, and makes the ride more fun too.
Okay. Thank you. That's good to know. I mean, as a inexperienced benefits advisor like myself, with only being a year into the business, it's tough to see it that way. As like you said, you want all the business you can, trying to build up your book. But yeah, of course, there's some that kind of either lead you on, or you just have that. It gives you bad energy for a while, and it can drain you. So
it does. And the other part is you lose them quick too. If you're not aligned, and my favorite thing is all these advisors that shop everything to get the lowest rate. Well, there's always somebody else who's got a lower rate. They'll either cut their commission, they'll find somebody who'll undercut the business. And all you're doing is a lot of work for a year to have the client leave again. You would actually you're actually net negative. Like you're putting all the work into place a plan and then lose a plan and start over again. You'd be better off having somebody who's going to last 2 or 3 years even than you would doing that. So kind of trying to ask the right kind of questions at the beginning to figure out, is this good? I mean, if somebody's had 5 advisors in 5 years, you're pretty sure you're going to be number 6 for 1 year, right? Yeah. And I have a great story about that. I got played very early in the business, and it was a learning opportunity for me. I had a referral, and it was a neighbor of one of my clients, like a next door business neighbor. And he said, I want you to shop my plan. We've been with the same advisor and the same insurance company for 5 years. I'm not really happy with the service. And so I said, okay, no problem. He sent me all the information. We put it all out to the market, and I got all these declines instantly, like literally within the first day, which was crazy because usually it takes a little while. And one of my new account reps, I was newer in the business and newer to dealing with this company, called me up and he said, I don't think we want to work with you anymore. And I go, what? I just sent in a quote request and you already cut me off? Like, this is my second quote request. And the reps, she said, sorry, but if you're going to lie to us, we don't want to work with you. I'm like, how did I lie to you? And she goes, that quote request you just sent in is just purely fabricated. It's garbage. And I said, what do you mean it's garbage? No, this is the information. I didn't do anything. And she said, well, we know that business has been with 5 companies and 5 advisors in the past 5 years. And I said, well, how do you know that? They said, well, we had it as a client 3 years ago. We've had it marketed to us and declined it, before and after that. So we know it's been moving around, and we know it left us, went somewhere else, and so on and so on. And now you're doing it, and you basically hid that. And I said, no, I didn't. I said, this is what the client gave me. And so I said, I'm really sorry. Don't cut me off, please. And I said, I'll send you all the stuff he sent me. And she said, no, I'll trust you. And so I called the guy up and I said, the information you gave me seems to be wrong, and the insurance companies are refusing to quote. I go, have you really been with 5 companies in 5 years? And he said, yeah, we have. I go, but you told me you've been with the same company for 5 years. You wrote it down on the form and everything. And he goes, yeah, because that's the only way you can get a quote. And I'm like, you're just playing the game. Like, I'm out. So, I ask a lot of questions at the beginning, and that, that I don't want to burn my name, let alone, be involved in fraud. And really, if you're getting a quote based on false information, it's insurance fraud. Not a fun place to be.
Yeah, we've all, I think with a few more years experience, unfortunately, Nathan, you'll probably run into that once or twice, but hopefully, with our advice. And
you have people that say, hey, I want you to quote in the last quarter because that's when we get the best rates, and you go, okay, you figured out the system.
Yeah, not qualifying to be a client. So you've alluded to it a little bit with your sailing experience and wanting to to grow your vacation time, which is admirable. So I think in our industry, there's really maybe a couple of different avenues. We can be a one-person shop and do our thing and kind of scramble and have a glorified day job. We can grow that a little bit with a few associates, or we can go to the extreme where we've got 25, 50 people working with us. So you fall somewhere on that scale, but I think in the place you fit is one that allows you to not really be a glorified day job, but still more of an entrepreneur and kind of create your own hours and stuff. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you set up Mainstay and how that allows you to have so much vacation, et cetera?
Yeah, so I'm pretty self-aware. I know I can be a bit of a dick to work with. I know I'm not a great manager of people. I kind of expect too much, and I'm kind of a tyrant. And I know that because I worked at Magna, the auto parts manufacturer, and that's where I met my wife. And she was in HR, and quite frankly, I kept getting sent down to HR from my employees complaining about me, and they would do anything for me. But like they'd go, tell the guy we're working 6 hours overtime to order us a pizza or something. I'm like, but we could go home. Like let's just get it done and go home. They're like order us a pizza. Anyway, so I know my limitations, and I'm not a good manager of people. So I never want to build staff or build an empire. Now, that said, I have a lot of people behind me. They just don't work on my payroll because I work with a GMGA, which is a group general managing agent, and they basically help do my backroom work. But I really wanted it to be home-based, and that was a logical decision, not just kind of saving money at the beginning, but I wanted to be around for my kids. I've got 2 sons now, age 30 and 21, and so in my office, there's kind of another desk behind me, and there was in our last place too, and the kids would come in and do their homework, and I'd be here for them at the end of the day, and that was part of my work-life balance stuff. I wanted to be around. My wife's a VP of HR for a multinational drug company, so she's got the bigger job in a way. People always laugh when I say that. They're like, "You're everywhere," and I'm like, "Yeah, but she's got more responsibilities, more people." Like at the high, I think 13,000 people that kind of relied on her. So we're very different people. But it really was, the goal was to keep it as a one-person shop, and so by staying home-based, it means I'm totally in control of things. And I sail all over the world, so I've returned clients' phone calls while being anchored off the coast of Turkey using Skype and Wi-Fi through a local taverna, a little bar on the beach that had a strong Wi-Fi signal, and that's worked out pretty well. And my wife is my biggest supporter, and she's also the person who kind of grabs the red pen when I do a newsletter and reminds me of how badly I write. So
I'm one of those too. She's amazing.
Yeah, totally, right?
Yeah.
And when I wrote the book, she was going to Africa to do some work with a volunteer group that she's on the board with. And I said, here, read this, because you got no Wi-Fi, you got nothing going on. And tell me what you think. And she's like, you know what? This is not half garbage. This is actually acceptable. And I'm like, holy cow, that's print worthy now. Like, that was a rough draft. But she kind of keeps me on track and stuff. And so one of my big realizations about how great my clients were and why my business model was right was about 8 years ago, I did what's called the Heavy Weather Passage, and I sailed from Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, direct down to St. Martin. And so no landfall, you're 1,000 kilometers offshore, maybe a little bit more. And we left on October 30th. So think about this time of year. That year, the temperature on October 30th in Lunenburg was 3 degrees Celsius. So we're heading out into the ocean on a 47-foot sailboat and just freezing cold for a week until you cross a Gulf Stream and start to get further south. But the day before I left, I had written up an email to my client saying, I'm doing this, I'm following my dreams, I'm going to be off the grid for 10 to 14 days, depending on weather. You can follow me on my satellite tracker and see where I am. If the tracker disappears, I have not died. Please don't hire somebody else. It's just probably bad weather stops the satellite from picking up signals. And I couldn't send that email. I had it sitting there drafted on my desk, and it was all filled in. All the clients' emails were in it, and I couldn't do it. I thought, how are my clients going to respond? Like, are they going to think, what a terrible guy, he's leaving us in the lurch, he's not available? There was backups and stuff. And my wife walked in, Joanne, and she looked over my shoulder and she goes, aren't you done yet? I'm like, yeah. I said, I don't know, I guess I can't do this. And she read it. She goes, it's actually really good. She goes, this is you. Your clients know who you are. You don't hide it. And this is making it a little bit more public than you have, but send it. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And she just reached over and hit send. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die, And literally 5 minutes later, all of a sudden emails start coming in. Fantastic. Can't wait to hear about it. Take pictures. Looking forward to the renewal. Hey, when was somebody said to you, I'm looking forward to your benefits renewal and stuff. So it was really good. So it kind of reinforced that my business model worked, my choice of clients worked, and maybe most importantly that my choice of wife was fantastic, or her choosing me, whichever way it worked.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think it's admirable to. Yeah, I'll speak from my own journey in business, in that in the beginning you're so nervous to reveal perhaps who you are. You're tight. You're not too loose. Clients can feel that. Yeah. They actually are not attracted to that type of personality, and the more open you are and the more honest you are about who you are, you're going to attract the real people who you want to be around. So It's amazing that you're able to develop a business like that with minimal overhead and do what you love, and you do too, man, right? Like, I mean,
you just doing these podcasts and stuff are showing who you are,
right?
And that's that you're open and vulnerable, and you're sharing bits of you through the whole thing too. So
for sure, absolutely. Dave, you wrote a book a couple of years ago, one that Nathan read. You showed it here a second ago. I read it a few times. Why don't you tell us more about why you wrote that and what's in it, and why it might be advantageous? Who's the audience, and what would they learn from it?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out the audience, because I keep getting feedback that changes my impression of it. So the idea was really basic. I wasn't planning on writing a book. I was going to do it when I retired, and I just started jotting down ideas of. It started out like a list of the 20 things I wish I'd known the first year of business, but I wasn't so quick. It took me 25 years to learn them all, and so I just kind of wrote down the 20 ideas, and we were doing, my son was living in Austria for a few years, and we had been doing some traveling over to see him, and we were in airports and on airplanes, and I just started scribbling out ideas, and it just kind of took form. And then, COVID hit, and I'd kind of done up the draft, and I went looking for a publisher, because I had this weird thing happen during the pandemic. I lost my ability to read. Not to read, but read for pleasure. And normally I'm a guy who goes on vacation for a week and I read 7 books in 7 days. And all of a sudden I couldn't get through a chapter. And it was like startling, but I could write, and I could write for hours and hours and hours. And it was kind of an eye opener. So I found the publisher and went, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and get this out to new advisors to share some of what I learned along the way. And the idea was, it's never going to be a bestseller. It's never going to, be made into a movie or anything like that. And I thought, maybe along the way I'll hand it out to some of my clients and stuff. Well, the client feedback was actually amazing. A lot of people knew who I was and what I did, but there's a lot of stories and pictures and talks about sailing trips and travels and how it ties into business. I uniquely think that being a sailor helps you be a better advisor. And, I have friends that are in the business that go, hey, being a mountain cross biker or a mountain biker or like a motocross biker helps you too, because, you're thinking ahead, you're planning, all this kind of stuff. So they came back and said, hey, this isn't just an insurance book. It's kind of a business book, and it could really be adapted to just about any business. So although it was made for advisors, I've had insurance companies and third-party administrators buy it and share it with their group, their account execs. I've had advisory firms like you buy and share it with their staff, and to me, that's just amazing. And from there, I ended up doing an Audible version and narrating it myself, which was a whole learning experience. Before we started today, we were talking about AV stuff, and I found a sound engineer, and he explained to me how I had to turn off, fluorescent lights, and that clock in the other room, you could hear the tick in the background, and it's just a whole evolution. So, it went from the top 20 list, kind of David Letterman style, to a published book, an Audible book, and Kindle, Kobo, and everything just kind of fell along with it. And it wasn't quite expected, but it's been a really fun journey. Everybody should do it. Everyone has a book in them.
I think they do. Is there another one coming?
So I wrote the second one, the rough draft of it, but it'll never be published.
Okay.
I thought it was so cool at the time, and I gave it to a friend to read a few chapters, and he's in the business, and he said, you can't publish this. You're going to be sued all over the place. It's kind of all the stuff that's happened in the background around our industry that nobody knows about, or the truth behind the story.
Yeah.
And you can't change the names. You can't, fake it or anything. So it'll sit on a shelf forever, probably. And I actually started a third that's a fictional one, which I don't know. I'm not sure if it'll make it out. I'd rather encourage other people to write their books than maybe write a second one, but never say never.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So let's switch gears a little bit, or adjust the sail, should we say? And so on this call, we've got a wide range of ages in the industry, and one thing I watch is what does the industry look like in the next couple of years? You mentioned consolidation has been occurring, and digitization and what's the use of a broker is a question that probably comes up sometimes. So, in the next 5 years, which goes by really quick as you learn, as you age, what do you see going on here in the industry? What do you feel, what is it going to look like?
Yeah, the average age of advisors, and it depends on who you talk to, it kind of ranges from 55 to 62 or something, but the average age is probably around 61. In the next 5 years, they're still going to be here, and they're going to be 5 years older. We have a lot of people that are in their 70s and 80s still working. That can be a good thing or a bad thing. But we are, like you said, we're losing a lot of small, really good practices that are being amalgamated. That bothers me a bit. I think it's a great opportunity for people. Obviously, you should have the opportunity to sell your business and help other people forward. But we've got about a half dozen consolidators that have been buying up everybody. And my concern for the business is, I think independence is important. I think if you're an employer, you want somebody you can talk to that you can relate to, that's your choice. When you start to go with some of the larger consolidators and stuff, I feel like you start to become a bit of a number in the cog of the machine. The old adage of, when you're dealing with a small practice, you're the big fish in the little pond, and now you're the little fish in the huge pond with some of these companies. And a couple of them are now saying, if you're under 50 employees or you're under a certain level of commission, we're just going to mail the renewal to you. We're not going to, take time. We're not going to negotiate. We're not going to take the time to add value to the relationship. And to me, that's terrible. If why have a client unless you're going to treat them like gold? And that's what we try and do. So I kind of worry that when those senior people with lots of institutional knowledge, lots of industry knowledge, when they sell out and then retire out, after a year, 2 or 3, we're losing a lot. And I don't think that that's helping the business necessarily. There are definitely economies of scale and technologies and things like that that benefit from that. But I don't know. To me, those aren't the things that matter the most. To me, the things that matter the most are keeping your clients out of trouble. And there's a lot of areas of liability around, like poor plan administration and things like that I think we can have the most effect on small businesses. So those, the 94.5% or 95% of businesses in Canada that are under 50 employees, to me, those are the ones that need the most help, and they value it the most as well. So I hope we keep lots of people independent. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wish we had the answer to that, but I kind of feel the same way. I mean, who knows? Keep doing what we're doing. Our goal is to stay independent as long as we can and continue to offer that service. It's not unlike other areas of our business that people focus on and other institutions that have chopped, folks with certain amounts of assets, et cetera, and kind of that service has gone down.
Kind of like the reverse Jack Welch model. Jack Welch from GE used to always say you wipe out your bottom 10% of non-performers.
Right.
And that's kind of what's happening. Not employees, that's what Jack Welch was famous for, but your client base. Take out your C's and D clients. And that isn't a bad thing to do. If you have bad clients, yes, get rid of them. But
yeah. Absolutely. So, we're coming near to the end of our time here. I wanted to ask a couple of questions, and one's a bit of a new one I wanted to introduce. It just kind of popped in my head. So, sure. In the theme of New Ground Financial, I'm curious to see, how are you breaking new ground now in your own business and in your own life, and how things are?
Wow. That's a great question. I don't know. I'm always doing new things. I said, I get bored easily. Maybe attention deficit disorder. It's like, squirrel, I like challenges and I like solving problems. So, as long as I have new challenges all the time, that'll keep me going forever, I think. So, I actually post on the CGIB site my projects I'm working on and what I got planned in the future. And some of them are crazy. I mean, one of the ones a couple of years ago was I found a flaw in the insurance companies, how they dealt with women returning from maternity leave. And half the insurance companies discriminated against women. They reset LTD pre-X clauses, which meant a woman returning from maternity leave might not have disability coverage. And that was wrong. It's actually somewhat illegal in some provinces, and it's just, I thought, morally wrong. So I thought, okay, well, it's simple. We'll just change the whole industry so that everybody treats women right returning from mat leave in respect to insurance companies. And about half the insurance companies said, there's no way we're ever going to do that. We have to protect our risk. We have to do this and that. Well, it took a couple of years, but they all aligned, and lots of fighting, a little bit of public shaming, some, questionable LinkedIn posts by me kind of, telling the truth. And I think as long as I have those things, I'm always kind of breaking new ground. Awesome. There's always new stuff. And I do volunteer work and mentoring and 100 new things. So what next few years brings, I want to develop some more products. We've done a little bit of that with CGIB and try and kind of improve our industry overall. Not just my clients, but yours and everybody else's too.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And what's one piece of advice you wish all Canadian business owners knew about their employee benefits program?
There's two, maybe. And
okay.
I don't know. They're totally different. One,
could be three.
Yeah. One, can we come back for another hour?
Yeah, I know, right?
So one is plan administrator liability coverage. It is a thing. It's a rider to property and casualty insurance, a rider to your CGL, commercial general liability, that protects employers in the event an employee has a problem with a benefit plan, like there's an error in administration, kind of like errors and omissions for advisors for clients, for employers. So it protects the employer. And I find that most employers have no idea, and actually most advisors have no idea what it is. So if I could say one thing to the employers that might be listening, check with your business insurance person and ask, do you have this? And if you do not have it, add it, and then call Nick and work with Nick, and he'll make sure that you're taken care of, not just in that, in other areas. So that's one. The other one is just a reminder that although we often treat benefits like a commodity, they are still an amazing thing. And they're amazing for one reason. They're one of the last very few non-taxable benefits that you can provide. You can give golf club memberships, you can give car allowances, but they're all taxable. And group benefits are a great way to provide a benefit tax-free, except for Quebec. Sorry, but I mean, and that in itself means the dollars you're spending go a whole lot further than giving a raise or a bonus, which are all taxed and source deductions and everything else. So I think sometimes employers forget that, and they start to look at numbers and they go, okay, I'm not happy with this rate increase. And you're kind of go, hold on a minute. You gave the insurance company $100. They gave your employees $120 back tax-free. If you gave your employees $100 bonus, they take home $60 or $40 or $50 or whatever. They got to remember that, and it's something I probably fail at reminding them of sometimes. But it's a magic money machine in a way.
Wow, that's great. Well, listen, Dave, we really appreciate you jumping on the podcast here today. You've been on our guest list for a while, and I'm so happy we made it happen.
Thank you
so much again for your advocacy in the industry and making us advisors who really care about our clients look and sound better.
And thank you for being a CGIB member and contributing to all that, because I don't do it alone. There's a lot of group effort and all that stuff. And
absolutely,
so thank you.
Many great people on that platform. So if you're an advisor and you're not yet there, take a peek for sure. There's probably something you can learn. To our listeners, again, thanks, Dave, for being here. It's episode 18 of The Interesting People You Meet. Thanks for tuning in.